September 11th, 1941. In a muddy field in Arlington, Virginia, bulldozers break ground on what will become the world's largest office building. Workers drive stakes into the marshy soil as America teeters on the edge of war, racing to build a fortress of democracy before the storm hits. Exactly 60 years later, September 11th, 2001, the same building becomes a target. A hijacked airliner slams into its western wall at over 500 miles per hour, testing whether the structure built for one war could survive the opening battle of another. This is no ordinary building. 5 concrete sides rising from a former swamp containing 17.5 miles of corridors and more office space than 2 Empire State Buildings combined. Built in just 16 months by workers who labored around the clock while America prepared for World War II. Yet the Pentagon's most remarkable achievement wasn't its size or speed of construction. In 1943, while the rest of Virginia enforced Jim Crow segregation, this building opened its doors for all races, the only integrated facility in the entire state. This is the story of how a desperate wartime construction project became the most recognizable symbol of American power, and how the building designed to withstand attacks would face its ultimate test exactly 60 years after ground was first broken beneath its 5-sided walls. In the summer of 1941, America's military was expanding at breakneck speed. The War Department employed 24,000 people scattered across 17 different buildings throughout Washington. Generals shuttled between converted apartments. Colonels worked from rented warehouses. It was, in one officer's words, a bureaucratic nightmare waiting to become a strategic disaster. President Franklin Roosevelt summoned Brigadier General Brehon B. Somervell with a seemingly impossible mandate: consolidate the entire War Department into a single building, and do it fast. Working with architect George Bergstrom, Somervell faced unprecedented challenges. The building would house 40,000 workers, but Roosevelt imposed strict constraints. It couldn't rise too high and spoil Washington's skyline, and it couldn't consume critical steel needed for tanks and warships. The initial site at Arlington Farms was bordered by roads forming a rough pentagon, so Bergstrom designed his building to match. When Roosevelt moved the project to swampy Hoover Field to avoid building near Arlington Cemetery, the 5-sided blueprint remained. The Pentagon shape, born of geographic necessity, would become an icon by choice. On September 11, 1941, the first ceremonial shovels broke ground. Then 3 months later, Pearl Harbor changed everything. As smoke rose from the battleships in the Pacific, the Pentagon's construction took on a desperate urgency. This was no longer just an office building, it was a fortress for a nation suddenly at war. Workers who had been moving at wartime speed now moved faster still, racing to complete the headquarters America would need to win the greatest war in human history. By early 1942, over 15,000 workers swarmed the site in rotating shifts, welding by floodlight and pouring foundations in pre-dawn darkness. The Potomac riverbank was little more than a stabilized marsh, requiring engineers to drive 41,000 concrete piles deep into the muck and haul in 5.5 million cubic yards of fill dirt. But beneath this construction frenzy lay a deeper battle. In Jim Crow, Virginia, the Pentagon's original blueprints called for separate white and colored facilities, requiring 284 restrooms, nearly twice what the building needed. Roosevelt had other ideas. His Executive Order 8802 banned racial discrimination in federal employment. When Virginia officials insisted state segregation laws must be followed, the federal government held firm. This was federal property, and federal rules would apply. The Pentagon would open fully integrated, the only such building in all of Virginia. The social victory came at a human cost. To clear land for the Pentagon, entire communities were erased. Over 150 families, most black residents of neighborhoods called Queen City and Hell's Bottom, received eviction notices. Bulldozers paved over their streets and schools, all sacrificed to the urgent demands of war. As the 5-sided structure took shape, its design created a marvel of efficiency. Despite covering 29 acres, no 2 points were more than a 10-minute walk apart. To conserve steel, the building used concrete ramps instead of elevators, an innovation that allowed thousands to move between floors without delay. By April 1942, the first employees were moving into the half-finished building, working at desks surrounded by exposed concrete and dangling wires. Secretary of War Henry Stimson relocated his office in May, directing America's global war effort from a construction site. The pace was relentless. Construction crews completed an entire floor every 5 days. What normally would have taken 4 years was compressed into 16 months through sheer force of will. On January 15, 1943, the Pentagon was declared complete. At over 3.7 million square feet, it was the largest office building on Earth. The final cost? $83 million, nearly $1 billion in today's money. Critics called it an extravagant waste, but as America's war machine hit full stride, those critics fell silent. As World War II ended, plans were drafted to convert the Pentagon into a peacetime hospital. The Cold War changed everything. In 1947, the building became headquarters for the new Department of Defense, housing not just the Army, but all branches of the military. The Pentagon evolved beyond architecture into a symbol of American strategic power. Soviet nuclear missiles targeted the building during the height of tensions, giving birth to one of the most enduring legends. The central courtyard's humble snack bar earned the nickname Ground Zero. According to Pentagon lore, Soviet intelligence had misidentified the hot dog stand as a secret bunker where American generals planned nuclear strategy. Whether true or mythology, the story captured the Pentagon's place in the global imagination, a building so significant that even its lunch counter figured into superpower calculations. The Pentagon's symbolic weight became heaviest during Vietnam. On October 21, 1967, 50,000 anti-war demonstrators marched to the building's doorstep, determined to alleviate it through protest. Young activists faced off against soldiers on the Pentagon steps, sliding flowers into rifle barrels in an iconic confrontation between peace and military power. Through the 1970s and 1980s, the Pentagon remained the control center for American military actions worldwide. When presidents made decisions of war and peace, cameras showed the five-sided building in the background, a visual reminder of the military muscle behind diplomatic words. In 1992, the Pentagon was designated a National Historic Landmark. Major renovations began in the late 1990s, with Wedge 1 receiving blast-restraint windows, reinforced walls, and state-of-the-art communications, making it the most secure section of the entire complex. As the Pentagon approached its 60th anniversary in 2001, it stood as more than a building. It was a repository of American military history and a working headquarters for the world's most powerful military. But history had one more test in store. Tuesday morning, September 11th, 2001. Exactly 60 years after construction began, American Airlines Flight 77 screamed across Virginia at over 500 miles per hour. At 9:37 a.m., the hijacked Boeing 757 slammed into the Pentagon's western wall with devastating force. The impact killed 184 people, 125 Pentagon employees, and 59 aboard the aircraft. But by a twist of fate, the terrorists had struck the one section that could best absorb the blow. Wedge 1, recently renovated with blast-resistant features, helped contain the damage. More critically, many offices stood empty due to the ongoing construction work. Officials later estimated that hundreds more would have died if the plane had hit an older, fully occupied section. The renovation, meant to protect against future threats, had inadvertently saved lives from an attack no one saw coming. Within hours, the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, was photographed helping carry stretchers, his suit covered in ash. By the next morning, an American flag hung diligently from the charred walls. Reconstruction began immediately under the Phoenix Project, rebuilding the destroyed section by the first anniversary. Workers cleared tons of debris and poured new foundations where Flight 77 had carved its path of destruction. Within 3 weeks, new concrete was being poured. On August 15, 2002, less than 11 months after the attack, employees moved back to their rebuilt offices. Exactly 1 year later, a ceremony rededicated the restored Pentagon. Where Flight 77 had torn through limestone and steel, spotless new walls now stood. In 2008, the Pentagon Memorial was unveiled, 184 illuminated benches arranged along a flight path, each bearing a victim's name. Inside, a chapel was built at the exact point of impact. The attack had given the Pentagon new meaning, no longer just a symbol of military power, but a monument to resilience, proof that democratic institutions could survive even the most devastating assaults. Today, as visitors walk the Pentagon's endless corridors, they traverse 8 decades of American history made concrete. The building has witnessed the planning of D-Day, the tensions of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the anguish of Vietnam, and the opening of the War on Terror. Born as a segregated structure in Jim Crow, Virginia, it became the first integrated federal building in the state. Designed as a temporary wartime expedient, it transformed into a permanent symbol of American military might. Built to coordinate one world war, it survived an attack to help fight an entirely different kind of global conflict. Yet, for all of its symbolism, the Pentagon remains fundamentally a workplace, home to 23,000 people who serve their country in ways both grand and mundane. The human cost cannot be forgotten. Families displaced for its constructions, 184 victims on the September 11th attack, and the countless lives affected by decisions made within its walls. Standing in the Pentagon's Memorial Chapel today, you can see through the windows to the memorial benches outside, 184 points of light honoring those who died defending the fortress of democracy. The views serve as a daily reminder that freedom's price is measured not just in dollars and concrete, but in human lives and human choices. From the urgency of 1941 to the resilience of 2001, the Pentagon has proven that institutions born in crisis can outlast their creators and grow beyond their original purpose. The 5-sided building that began as a bureaucratic solution has become a symbol of American power, a target of American enemies, and ultimately a monument to American endurance. The Pentagon's greatest lessons may be this: that the institutions we build in our darkest hours often become the foundations for our brightest days, and that sometimes the most important fortresses are the ones we construct, not just against our enemies, but for our highest ideals. As long as the United States needs defending, the Pentagon will stand, its 5 sides forming an unbroken promise that democracy, however imperfect, is worth protecting. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you liked the video and would like to support the channel, please like and subscribe. That stuff really helps the channel out. And if you have a friend that you think would also like this video, please feel free to send it their way. If you have any video topics you'd like us to cover in the future, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.